Hey guys, it's your boy Marc back with another video. Wearing my Ziggler McIntyre shirt. It's a shirt that I don't wear often enough. And yeah, this is actually a video response to the Elitist. He did a video talking about his journey with WWE, and he was like, do you want to do video responses? So I thought I would do mine. All right, and I kind of wanted to do a video like this for quite a while, actually. I mean, for starters, I have been a wrestling fan for 12 years, since April 25th, 2009. And I remember that because it was my cousin's birthday. That's how I remember the exact date. And today is November 16th, 2021. And the day I became a wrestling fan was 4,588 days ago. So, yeah, I'm gonna just talk about my journey, and hope you guys enjoy it. I always knew of WWE and wrestling for all my life, but for a long time never became a fan at all. And given how much of a fan I ended up becoming, I can't imagine my life without it. My earliest memory is from way back in 2002 when I was turning 4 years old. I remember seeing a confrontation between Brock Lesnar and Rey Mysterio, and I remember Brock pushing Rey down, but that's about it. Hopefully those aren't false memories and that actually happened. But being I was 4 years old, it wouldn't surprise me if they actually were. I remember we also had a wrestling video game, which was WWF SmackDown Just Bring It. I remember finding it really hard to play. I mean, keep in mind, I was only 3 or 4. But of all things that stuck in my mind all these years, aside from finding it hard to play, all I could remember was coming across Eddie Guerrero and the character select screen. Like I said, it was 2009 that I became a wrestling fan. I was just saying some of my earliest ever memories of wrestling, of course. Across my childhood, I always remember coming across WWE stuff like toys and saw the logos, but I had no idea what W stood for. I knew it was wrestling, but the logo was just a W, and I never knew what it stood for. I probably thought that it was just a logo for wrestling in general or something. But long before actually becoming a fan, I had heard of some wrestlers before. I had heard of Hulk Hogan. I had heard of Undertaker from seeing a kid at school with Undertaker's shirt. And I remember how I heard of John Cena the first time. From seeing somebody's school bag with him in about 2007. Little did 8 or 9-year-old me know in 2007 how much of a ginormous ultra fan of him I would go on to become. Still in 2007, I remember the Jack Black movie Nacho Libre premiering on TV. I was, and still am, a big Jack Black fan, so I was excited for this movie, even though I had no interest in wrestling whatsoever. I love the film, and I think I tried getting into wrestling in 2007. I vaguely remember putting the TV on an episode of Raw very briefly, and I remember seeing a bald man talking into a microphone into a crowd. My mind wants me to say that man was Kurt Angle, but it couldn't have been Kurt Angle because he had left WWE around mid-2006, as my current self knows. The thing is, throughout a huge chunk of my childhood, I had always known about, but had no interest in watching wrestling whatsoever. But I always had respect for it. I thought it was quite brave and admirable that people would actually be going out and fight each other, quote-unquote, for real, on TV. You know, not being a wrestling fan, I had never heard of that it was fake or any of that bullshit that a good amount of non-wrestling fans throw its way for whatever stupid fucking reason. But now, fast forward to early April 2009. Still not a wrestling fan yet. I was at a family get-together thing. I had some cousins there who had many wrestling figures and a ring, but they wouldn't let me play with them, those assholes. I did play wrestling with them though, like physically playing wrestling with them. And one of them asked me who I wanted to be, because it was a role play wrestling type thing. And being I still wasn't a wrestling fan, I was like, I'll be John Cena, I guess. And I honestly don't remember if I enjoyed it or not, because the only other thing I remember from it was one of the little shit kids was crying and getting all pissy with me, along with others joining in on him, because I apparently heard him when we were play fighting, which is how play wrestling works, you fucking dumbass little cunt. But now, we go to later that month. April 25th, 2009. My cousin Kiriyama's, I believe, 14th birthday. I get picked up, and we're in a van that day. And the first thing we do was go bowling. I don't remember if I got any points or whatever. All I remember is, the fuck I gotta wear these shitty ass fucking shoes for, cunt. But I'm sure it was still fun. Then we played laser tag, which was awesome. Then we had KFC, which was so delicious. I remember Kiriyama's mum giving me an extra piece of chicken, and I was so thankful for that. Then we had ice cream birthday cake in the car, which was also very delicious. We then went back to his house and played SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. We were scrolling through wrestlers to play as, and I saw The Rock as a playable wrestler. And I knew I recognized him from somewhere. I was like, whoa, that's that actor. And I immediately tried choosing him to play as, but Kiriyama's mate or cousin or whoever was named Levi. He had already picked him to play as. So I had to pick someone else, and I picked Rey Mysterio, who of course was another wrestler I had of course heard of before becoming a wrestling fan. And I got annihilated. I didn't know how to play and shit. I think Levi was kicking my ass in the game, and I was getting pissed off at him, kicking me when I'm down in the game, and I was shouting, wait till I get up. And Kiriyama said, they're not gonna wait till you get up, which I knew was true. Even my mom said, it's true though, when I mentioned that to her. Then, later that evening, I used their landline. And I called my mom, asking her about The Rock. Is he a wrestler or was he a wrestler? And my mom said he was, which was true at the time. And I remember everyone else either went back to their home or went to bed, and it was just me and Kiriyama who was still awake later that night. I was actually eager to start playing SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 again, but didn't think I would get to play it again that night. So when I was still on the phone with my mom, I was straight up just asking her to come pick me up, but Kiriyama says, hey, we'll play more wrestling, okay? I just want to finish watching Saving Private Ryan on TV. So he finishes watching that, and he puts the game back on for me. So I finally played SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 again that night, and of course I immediately chose to play as The Rock, which I couldn't before. I was so happy. I was just playing the game for so long, and Kiriyama actually fell asleep, and then it was just me awake at his house playing that game for a lot of the night. And it did feel pretty awkward to me, being at someone else's house, being the only one awake and playing video games, I won't lie, it did feel awkward. But that's when I knew I had officially become a wrestling fan. Finally. Did I in that moment picture myself talking about it 12 years later in a YouTube video? Absolutely not, but that's the beauty of it. Now, after that, for the rest of the year, if I'm being honest, I very barely ever watched WWE on TV. I watched Raw like once that whole year. I was still as green as you could possibly be with me being a fan of wrestling. I didn't know shit. Even to this day, I sometimes feel like maybe I still don't know as much as I think. And at school, I of course let it be known that I was now a wrestling fan. I was actually known in school back in 2009 as that guy that loves John Cena. And there was this girl in class named Deja, who I'm sure, even deep down, even then, I think deep down I knew she was just playing with me and having fun. But she literally told me that John Cena is my father, and that John Cena said I can have sex with his wife whenever I want, and then I can move in with him. She even quote-unquote gave me John Cena's quote-unquote phone number. And during show and tell one time, I actually brought up that she gave me his phone number, and she looked so embarrassed and everyone cracked up laughing. I even told my mom back at home that I was given John Cena's phone number, and she laughed, telling me not to call that number because it's a US number and the bill would be expensive from New Zealand. But in hindsight, I knew that. My mom knew that it was just playful bullshit, you know. Then, around mid-2009, I think, I went shopping at the warehouse with my grandparents. My lovely grandparents, who I am thankful to say are still alive and well to this day. I bought two things, and when I say I bought, I mean my grandparents bought for me. Those two things I bought were this Michael Jackson CD, and the other thing I got was The Rock, the most electrifying man in sports entertainment, 3-disc DVD set. My first official WWE wrestling DVD. I go home, I look at the insert to see whatever matches sounded interesting to me, and there was this particular tag team match that I liked, because I liked the names, and I saw them as characters, like, in SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 a lot. And that match was The Rock and Mankind versus Undertaker and Big Show. This was the first match I ever selected on a WWE DVD. I had so much fun watching this match, and I just fell in love with The Rock for his skill, you know, not in a romantic way, and the DVD I got. And I felt like I didn't need another wrestling DVD. I loved it, and I was happy with it, but I did not realize that there was a whole ocean of other wrestling DVDs too. But thankfully I learned their lesson much later. And much later, because that Rock DVD was my one and only wrestling DVD for, no joke, almost 2 years. Oh. In August 2009, yes, we're still in 2009, I begged my mom to order SummerSlam. This was the first WWE pay-per-view ever ordered. I saw this awesome ad for it in a magazine that had John Cena all over it. I knew I wanted to watch it, but with time zones and all that, this pay-per-view was actually during school, so my mom taped it for me live onto a burned DVD, and the first thing I did when I got home was watch it. And I'll be honest, I didn't really enjoy the pay-per-view at all. I mean, now I can really enjoy it, but I was still like green with understanding wrestling and all that. I did love the last two matches though. And also the William Regal vs. Christian squash match had me like, what the heck? I didn't watch the whole show in the living room. I took the burned DVD into my room where I watched the last two matches, which I really loved. You know, John Cena versus Randy Orton for the WWE Championship, and the main event, which was Jeff Hardy versus CM Punk in a TLC match for the World Heavyweight Championship. I really dug and enjoyed both matches, like I said. But I was so disappointed with the endings to both matches. I mean, yes, even then, I was rooting for John Cena to defeat Randy Orton and win the WWE Championship, but he lost. And I was also rooting for Jeff Hardy to retain the World Heavyweight Championship, and he lost too. Although I did love the ending to that SummerSlam, even then, when Undertaker appeared out of nowhere, chokeslam CM Punk. And I showed that to my mom, and she loved it too. Then, my 11th birthday comes, and two of the things I got were this WWE Trumps card set, and what I wanted the most for my birthday that year, which was SmackDown vs. Raw 2009 for the PS2. I was so happy to get that game, man. It was also a school day. Yes, unfortunately, it was a school day. But it was such a fun day, man, because everyone at school was wishing me happy birthday. And in a huge, awesome coincidence, it was also the last day of school, which was just even better. And then that Christmas, I got SmackDown vs. Raw 2010 for the PS2. I was ecstatic, and I played that game like nothing, man. But still, despite everything I've said so far, we're still only at the beginning. I didn't watch wrestling on TV at all, still throughout 2010, except for The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels segment leading up to WrestleMania 26, when Undertaker finally accepted the challenge. And I remember like switching to SmackDown like for 2 seconds, and then I saw the Nexus, and I'm like, who the fuck are these cunts? But near the end of 2010, that was when I started searching up WWE videos and shit. And then December that year, December of 2010, I created my YouTube account, the very one you're watching this video on, or listening, I should say. I still don't remember why I created this account from way back then, but here we are, almost 11 years later to the date, but I'll talk about that more when the actual anniversary date comes. In fact, I probably already have talked about that a bunch of times in past anniversary videos, but back to wrestling. There is no activity aside from me creating it, of course, and adding a few videos to my favorites list. No activity for about 4 months. I created this YouTube account at my grandparents' house, which did have broadband internet. But we still, with my immediate family, we still didn't have our own like computer. I mean, we had a laptop, but it had dial-up, and and then that broke, and then in I think April 2011, I think that was when we got our full computer finally, and we finally had our own broadband internet, and I was so excited. But it wasn't until. But before we get to that, we're gonna go back to January 2011, 3 months prior, when I ordered and watched the Royal Rumble 2011 pay-per-view. I feel like this was an extremely critical moment in my life as a wrestling fan. I absolutely loved the show, despite no knowledge of what storylines were going on, or whatever. And I was so disappointed about Alberto Del Rio winning the Royal Rumble, because I was rooting for John Cena, alright? Not only was I rooting for Cena, but I didn't even know who Alberto Del Rio was. I didn't know who he is. Like, when I saw him win the Rumble, I was like, who the fuck is this cunt? I mean, nowadays, I am a huge Alberto Del Rio fan now, and I still am, despite some shady stuff he may or may have not have done in his personal life. But anyways, I absolutely love that pay-per-view. That's when I started just watching WWE for real, all the time. And about 2 weeks later, The Rock returned to WWE, and I went ballistic in the best way. I mean, The Rock was the man who was the only wrestler that I really knew for the longest time. And when my mom, going back to 2009, when my mom told me he was a wrestler, using past tense on the phone, my cousin's house, he had returned to wrestling. It really felt like, even though I didn't know what full circle meant back then, it really felt like a full circle thing for me, for The Rock to come back after my mom told me he was a wrestler. I really did. It really did feel like full circle. And then he was talking shit about John Cena. And I didn't know what to feel about that. I had very confused feelings about that, because I loved both John Cena and The Rock. And I swear to God, man, I thought that everyone loved Cena, and that they only started hating on him when The Rock came back and started talking shit. Even my mom thought that. I was very angry at The Rock for this. I was angry at these asshole fans for being fucking sheep and turning on John Cena just because The Rock doesn't like him. I hated Cena haters, and I still do to this day. they have their heads so far up their asses beyond retrieval, it's insane. Asses that they don't even wipe, by the way, because they probably just shit where they sit 24/7 at their computer, where they have no life, and fap off to the indies 24/7 non-stop. But back to wrestling. I begged my mum to order WrestleMania 27 for me, because no joke, I was mostly excited about Jerry Lawler versus Michael Cole. I'm not even joking, I still thought wrestling was real at the time. And I hated Michael Cole with a passion. And I loved so much the idea of him getting his ass kicked at WrestleMania. In hindsight, I have good memories of Michael Cole, honestly, and I consider him one of the best commentators of all time. I know that neckbeards that jerk off non-stop 24/7 to the indies love to shit on him, but I stand by what I said. So WrestleMania 27 day comes, and I'm so excited. I watched for the first time that very morning, actually, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the movie. And I had a blast watching it. I watched it just to kill time before WrestleMania started. And then WrestleMania starts, and I loved every second of it. Even though Jerry Lawler and John Cena lost, I still loved every second of it. And looking back on that very day that I watched it live, I still had a blast watching it. I'll never forget it. I cannot ever watch it the same way now, though. All I have are the memories. But I was ecstatic that Edge retained against Alberto Del Rio. And my mom, there was this part in the Cody Rhodes versus Rey Mysterio match when Cody Rhodes ducked, but Rey Mysterio kicked him. And my mom actually called Cody Rhodes a dumbass when that happened. I'm not even joking. And no joke, I actually literally wanted to grow up, become a wrestler, and defeat Undertaker at WrestleMania and end a streak. I wanted that. I was on the edge of my seat, just begging for Undertaker to win, just so I could grow up and end the streak myself. But I literally thought Triple H had won so many times. I'm not even kidding. But when Undertaker won by the skin of his teeth, I was so relieved. And then the main event of WrestleMania 27 comes. John Cena versus The Miz for the WWE Championship. And I was laughing looking at The Miz, man. Again, this was when I didn't know wrestling was scripted, and I thought The Miz looked like a chump who John Cena could easily destroy and win the title from. So, when it ended in a countout, and The Rock restarted the match and attacked John Cena, with The Miz covering him and pinning him 1, 2, 3, my jaw dropped to the fucking floor. I was shocked out of my mind that the wimpy chump, who I expected to easily get destroyed, actually retained. I was so angry at The Rock for this. And I was so upset that John Cena lost. But dang, I gotta say, man, I think even back then, even though I didn't know it at all, I think back then I actually gained a lot of respect for The Miz. Because, like I said, I thought he was a wimp. I thought he was going to easily get destroyed, but he actually retained. And then, it was the next night on Raw. And John Cena and The Rock were talking about having a match. Now, being 12 at the time, not knowing any better, I legitimately thought that they were just going to have their match at Extreme Rules. I'm not even joking. But they announced the match for that next year's WrestleMania, which to me was like, what? Then I think it was between when WrestleMania 27 and Extreme Rules 2011 happened that I actually logged back onto my YouTube account and I started getting into the wrestling YouTube community. So now Extreme Rules 2011 comes along and I didn't order the pay-per-view, but just imagine the insane amount of joy in me when I hear that John Cena won the WWE Championship from The Miz. I was going insane. I went crazy in the best way, man. I was so happy when I heard he won, man. I was legit like that kid in the crowd when AJ Styles defeated Jinder Mahal to win the WWE title back in 2017. I couldn't have been happier. Then I go onto YouTube and I'm obsessed with watching wrestling YouTubers, man. From Spinning at 1 to Trademark 629 to Sanders Robin 24. By the way, that's where I got the Sanders name from. Just saying. But I was very confused at the same time when I was watching their videos, because they were using words like booking and stuff like that, and I'm like, what are you talking about, booking, you know? And then I eventually, you know, that's when I finally realized what people meant when they said that wrestling is fake. I was told by my family way back in 2009, when I first became a fan, that it was fake. Many times. But then I remember back in 2010, I was telling my grandma, Matt and Jeff Hardy, they're brothers in wrestling and they hate each other. And then she told me that it's fake. I didn't know what she meant at all. But eventually I knew that what they meant by fake was that it was scripted. I don't think I really cared though. I still loved it. I still had a passion for it like no other. And I didn't watch Money in the Bank 2011 live when it happened. But I was, like, on Twitter and all that, like, just seeing what everyone was saying and all that. And I legit thought that John Cena got fired when I heard he lost the WWE Championship. I legit thought he was fired. And, of course, this was before I realized what people meant was by wrestling is fake, theoretically, of course, but, yeah. I pretty much just couldn't stop obsessing over wrestling, man. I watched YouTubers all the time who talked about wrestling. It was the one thing I loved and was passionate about for the longest time. I was making friends online, talking about wrestling. I was making my own YouTube videos about wrestling. I couldn't stop watching wrestling-related videos for so long. I couldn't stop talking about wrestling at home, even to the point where I embarrassed myself. You know, I regret that, but still, at least I get to mention it. And even when I went to the hospital from August to September 2012, I would still just talk about wrestling non-stop. And then it was October 2012, and the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view happened, and I just didn't care anymore, man. I was getting back into movies, which I'm glad I did. But I got back into movies and I just didn't care about wrestling anymore, man. Although I still every now and then went to search up new wrestling stuff just to see what was going on every now and then, you know. I heard John Cena won the 2013 Royal Rumble. I was like, yes, sweet. And I suddenly remembered that WrestleMania 29 was happening in April, and then my mum was actually on the computer, and I asked her, Mum, is it alright if I check to see the WrestleMania results? And then we were both happy to see that Undertaker's streak continued. And we were also ecstatic when it said that John Cena defeated The Rock. Alright? And me and my mum both smiled at that. But that was it. I think I watched a few highlight videos for the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. But I still didn't care to actually go back and start watching wrestling again, you know what I mean? Because I was all about movies again now. I heard about Jurassic Park 4, which turned into Jurassic World, of course. I heard about Indiana Jones 5, which still hasn't been made to this day. Although it's finally coming out now. Star Wars Episode 7 at the time. And I fell in love with movies again. And to this day, that is still a ongoing, never-ending obsession. But again, back to wrestling. So fast forward to April 2014. I suddenly remember, oh, WrestleMania 30 should be soon. And I search up the card for WrestleMania 30, and I'm like, oh, this looks awesome. And I asked my mom and aunt if we could order it. And they said yes, as long as I did my homeschool the previous day to spend the next day just watching the pay-per-view, which I did. I loved WrestleMania 30, and I was shocked to my core when Brock defeated Undertaker to end the streak. And I reviewed the pay-per-view immediately after it ended. And my review from that very day is still up to this day, by the way, so check that out. That's my initial reaction. I've since had different reactions, but you know what I mean. But that was it. I didn't want to watch wrestling in full time. I just decided to watch WrestleMania 30. I watched WrestleMania 30. I loved it. and then I just went back to not caring about wrestling. And that was until May of 2015. Now, May of 2015 changes fucking everything. And the effect from then is still present and ongoing right now. To this day. So, in May 2015, I hear about a WWE pay-per-view called Payback coming on. And I suddenly remembered hearing about, from like 2012, like, people finding live streams online, and that's how a lot of YouTubers watched wrestling pay-per-views to review them without paying for them. And I thought that was like just a myth or something. Like, that sounded too good to be true for me. So guess what? I searched up WWE Payback 2015 live stream, and holy shit, the whole pay-per-view for free, live, as it was happening, was actually being streamed online. Yo. I watched it, and I reviewed it, and then I was like, why stop here? I should just keep doing this. And that led to where we are today. And I've been on and off with WWE, and even having the WWE Network in itself in general since then. But most of the time, my amazing and generous best friend Bishop just let me use his WWE Network. So you can thank him for me having done so many WWE pay-per-view reviews since Fastlane 2018. I often wonder, if not for playing SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 at my cousin's house, if I ever would have become a wrestling fan. I honestly have no idea. But I'm so glad it happened. Playing SmackDown vs. Raw 2007 at my cousin's house ultimately led me to one of my many passions, and it led me to meeting John Cena. It's a story I've told 1,000,000,001 times, so I won't get into that again here. But remember when I said that I was obsessed with and only cared about wrestling from 2011 to 2012, that it was my only obsession? Well, thankfully I cut that out. Because right now, I'm obsessed with wrestling and other things. Never had to be one or the other. I can love wrestling, I can love movies, music, script writing, all that at the same time, and I do. And I'm so glad I do. This could have been much longer, by the way. There was actually a ton, and I mean a fucking ton more shit that I was ready to talk about for this video. But I felt the transcript, and yes, everything I said I was reading off of a transcript that I wrote, by the way, was already getting quite long, and I'm trying to get this video up tonight, while it's still November 16th, 2021, while it's still the exact day. So I regret, not working on this much earlier today, because I wanted to get this up. So, yeah, that's the condensed version, man. And that's my story. A condensed version of the story, because like I said, I could have gone on and on and on about so many little details, but I would never be able to get this video done for tonight. So thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and yeah, peace out, y'all.